Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Dominique Milano, and she is the co-founder and president of the American Institute of Certified Tax Planners. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
So, Dominique, tell me, what made you get into taxes? You've been doing this for a while. You've done, trained me with tax planning and things. What was it that made you decide to get into taxes?
Well, there's my evolution, Gary, as getting into taxes in general. And then there's a portion of my career where I really pivoted to focusing on tax strategy, because, there's actually a difference.
Yep.
And so when I first got into the tax profession and got my CPA license and worked for a really large local firm, I started realizing that there are over 400 different tax strategies available for small business owners, but you don't automatically qualify.
Mm-hmm.
It takes proactive planning to claim it, and it all depends on your business and personal goals. And so it's not just some sort of checkbox on a return. And I also kind of discovered there's a dirty secret in our industry, and that is that most CPAs are overworked and they've got at least 300 other clients to serve. And so when you've got your professional that's working 16 hours a day during filing season and only have a couple hours per return, they do the best they can. But most CPAs are not actually set up to sit down and do tax planning with you. And that's a huge problem. So I made a decision and hit a pivotal point in my own business where I said, gosh, this is a real shame that business owners aren't getting access to the stuff that the really big businesses are. And we can see this. The quickest way to build wealth is to lower your taxes. As you lower your taxes, you accumulate more cash that you have available to invest. And that should really be a high priority for most people. And so as a result of kind of how the system is broken and people not wanting to think about death and taxes, they kind of let their taxes slowly kill their wealth. And I didn't like that at all. I really wanted to make a change and make sure that every day common businesses get access to the same information that the big guys use. And so I've been at this over 20 years now, and I still work with clients one-on-one, but my bigger impact in how I'm changing things is by making sure that more accountants know these strategies and run their practice in a way so that they can afford to sit down with someone and actually work in this method, because it's a very different model.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so, you still, you have the CPAs or tax preparers that are out there that are preparing taxes. And then you have the people that you have trained that are doing tax planning.
Right.
These are obviously two very different engagements that people are doing, and it's two very different things that are being charged for doing this. Can you kind of explain a little bit of the difference between tax planning versus tax preparation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not the same thing at all. According to Forbes magazine, 93% of small businesses overpay their taxes by at least $10,000 a year. And that's simply because they're not ever getting to the planning piece. they either are making the assumption that all taxes kind of lumped in under one umbrella. They're taking care of my tax for me, everything.
Right.
And that's really not true. And so it really takes a specialist, and it's kind of like in medicine. You know, if I've got a cold, I'm going to see my general practitioner. But if I need surgery on my knee, which I recently went through, I'm not going to have my general practitioner operate on my knee. I'm going to see the specialist and the orthopedist that works on knees, nothing but knees. And it's the same in the tax industry. And unfortunately, the public just isn't very well educated about that. But here's the one way you can tell. So if you're watching this right now and you're wondering in your mind, ooh, I wonder, am I getting planning or am I just getting preparation? It all has to do with the timing. When we're doing tax preparation, it's always after the fact. And so really your tax professional is very limited in what they can do because they're simply recording what took place last year. And you either qualify or you don't qualify for tax breaks. A planner, on the other hand, is working with you in real time. So in other words, if you're meeting now, you're working on this year before the year closes out, because there could be things that you could easily qualify for just by rearranging a few things with how you do business, for example, or what accounts you pay bills from. There's lots of really little moves that you can make, or shifts, and that's what really makes the difference. Instead of saying, do I or don't I qualify for this break? It's really asking, how can I qualify? And if I'm not writing a check from the proper account today, can I change that habit of mine so that now I'm entitled to this break? And it really is just that simple, but you've got to be strategic. You've got to be working in real time rather than after the year is over. And you've got to have that strategic plan that tells you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Those are the biggest differences.
Now, is when somebody puts together a tax plan, is it kind of I'm going to say lots of times people think it's like a business plan, and they kind of, oh, okay, well, I've done it, and they throw it in the drawer and nothing. What about like the maintenance of it and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get that all the time. The truth is that your business is changing constantly. So for business owners, it's extremely important that you're on top of this. And again, really shifting the timing of when you're working with your professional is what's critical. So if you get the plan, for example, throw it in a drawer and forget about it, and now it's business as usual next year, and I see my accountant in March, you're going to get the same results.
Right.
However, when you work in advance, you're looking at not only what's changed in your business this year, but you're also looking at what's changed with the tax code. The tax code's constantly changing on a regular basis. And Gary, better than most people, how much study is required just to stay on top of things, especially when you're looking for ways to save money. And they're constantly coming out with this bill or that bill, and being aware of how it works, who qualifies, how to qualify if you don't already, and then what do you need to do to preserve that? How do you protect yourself to make sure that someone's not going to come and take that away from you? Because the IRS actually has the authority to do that. So it's not only about knowing how to do it and when to do it, but it's also how do you support it? So that if the IRS shows up at your door, and we know they're getting a whole bunch of new money coming in, and so we know there's a higher chance that they can show up. And so we want to be prepared in case that ever happens. So it's not a problem. You just go, yep, here's what I got. And you're protected.
So, you just talked about, getting that plan and putting it in the drawer and stuff like that. A true planner is going to help you implement this plan. They're not just going to throw some ideas at you collect a check and walk away, or they shouldn't.
Right.
If they've ever
Right.
been trained by you, they won't. So it's important to make sure that that whoever is helping you do this is helping you implement everything and making sure it's done properly.
Yes. And again, that's a really easy test just to ask yourself, reflect on what's the working style here. I think there are surveys, the majority of Americans they're not confident that they're paying the least amount of tax possible. And that all comes down to how are they working with the accountant? As long as it's in advance, and you should also have your accountant really be telling you how much is this going to save you.
Right.
Without that, it kind of makes it difficult to know, is it costing me more than it's saving me, for example?
Right.
If I had it my way, I think I'd have everybody have one of every kind of entity, but that doesn't make financial sense, right? And so you always want to balance that out to understand, what is the upside here for me? Why am I doing this? What am I trying to accomplish by making this change, or having this new business entity in my life, or this trust, or this bank account, these employees, however you look at it.
Right.
So it's a really kind of easy test to see if you're on track there, is how is that accountant working with you? How do they talk about what they're doing? We can talk all day long about what happened last year, and it certainly is valuable information, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But at the same time, if you really want to be strategic with growing your wealth, you need strategy to do it. And the strategy piece positions you to be in the best optimal place so that you can accomplish your goals.
Right. Now, on my show, I've had, financial advisors and attorneys and things that have been on, and we've asked, how can you tell if the person that is giving you advice, and in this case, putting together a tax plan for you, how can you tell if they're qualified? What's the credentialing or anything else that they may have that helps you feel a little bit easier that you're getting somebody that's qualified?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's just like doctors. You want to look for that specialist. We've got certified tax planners, and that's a specialty designation. It's a license. There are requirements to uphold that license. There's a complaint process. So if somebody out there had the license, they can lose it by not following the code of ethics and the regulatory requirements that are there. And so that's generally a good way that you can check somebody out, is to look for that background. And again, it comes down to work style. You mentioned a little bit, how do I know about the advice piece? And there's really this difference between advice and a strategic plan. Advice could really kind of be broken down to an idea, right? So I can share an idea with you, Gary, about a new tax credit, for example, that's really lucrative for business owners. But that doesn't tell you the how to do it, the when to do it, and the how to protect yourself with that, and the why, so that you feel confident in knowing, I'm not trading one benefit for another. This is why I'm doing this. And so a good strategic plan is going to be a combination of strategies. It's never just one idea,
Right.
but it's a combination, and the complexities of the tax code make it so that when you put all of these ideas together, some disqualify each other. We can't have A and B at the same time because of rules, right? And so you really have to have an expert with that discernment to be able to come in and identify, where does this start to fall apart? And then you want somebody that's going to back their word up in writing. Back their word up in writing and source that writing. What law is that advice coming from? What court case gives us the ability to do this and take this position? How have the courts looked at it before? And so a really good expert is going to put everything in writing for you, because they're going to stand behind that work. They've got a license on the line, and they treat it seriously.
Right. Right.
So that's how you can really tell.
So if you don't mind, let's take a topic that everybody's always interested in,
Yeah.
and that's travel. How am
Yeah.
I able to I'm wherever I'm going this summer,
Mhm.
and I want to be able to write that off through my business, and I
Yeah.
want to be able to bring my family.
Mhm.
How am I able to legally write this off? What do I need to do? What do I need to prepare ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ground rules that we can talk about, but what I like to talk about specifically with travel is number one, it's easier to understand than, we can get some crazy topics on here and go really deep, and then everybody would be bored to tears,
Right.
except you and I. We'll be the only ones like super fascinated,
Right.
right? But the other thing is there's sort of this infamous quote by a former IRS commissioner that's where he mentioned it's actually possible to do 100% of your travel and have it be tax deductible. And that's pretty impressive, right? So if travel is something you like to do, most people like to get out for vacation at various times during the year. But regardless of that, some of the ground rules is that you always want to play by the tax system regulations so that you can show the IRS what they want to see if you get audited. And so it starts with understanding what qualifies as a business trip. First of all, it has to be more than 50 miles away from the place that you call home. It's got to be at least one night. It's a minimum of 2 days. So you must be sleeping away from home overnight. And the business aspect must be planned in advance. And so sometimes people will say, oh, have you ever been invited out for coffee or dinner or something, Gary, with a friend? And they go, oh, let's talk about business for
Yeah.
5 minutes, so that I can write this meal off. Doesn't work that way.
Right.
But now, if there's a realistic probability that you would be interested in doing business with your friend, and they set that meeting up ahead of time and wrote you an email and said, Gary, let's go out to dinner. I want to talk to you about my business. That's fantastic. Now you've got a business aspect planned in advance, and that can make the difference between whether it's deductible or not. So that's what qualifies it as a business trip. And so once you know that how to qualify something as a business trip, it's a matter of just combining. You combine that business aspect with personal use. And there's special loopholes that allow you to throw in days. For example, if you've got business on a Friday and business on a Monday, and you want to do personal days Saturday and Sunday, guess what? You can. You could even turn it into a longer vacation if that Monday is a federal holiday. So you could work Friday, work Tuesday, you get Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, your lodging, your transportation to and from. So it's a big lion's share of the cost of the vacation itself. Right. Documentation is of course needed, and there are different rules as it relates to being away for business versus being away for a seminar or conference. With a seminar or conference, you need to be attending that conference at least 4 hours or more. Well, it's really more than 4 hours. So it should be 4 hours, 1 second or more, but then you can take the rest of the day off and have play. On the other hand, business, you could have a single business appointment in one day. Now, we wouldn't want it to be every day you've got a 15-minute business appointment. Right. Come on, the IRS can kind of see through that. Right. But, I know folks that are traveling. You're in Maryland, right?
Correct.
So you've probably know people that go into DC to do a quick filing of something. Maybe they're dropping off briefs or something of that sort. It takes, a half hour. The rest of the day is free to play. And so in that way, you're able to combine the business aspect of it with the personal nature. And it's just really cool. There's all kinds of loopholes regarding cruises and the luxury items. What level of luxury is sort of too much for example, meals, deducting that. So there's lots and lots of things that can be done. And so if you do this well, the idea here is you can make everything that you're doing tax deductible. And that's a really powerful thing.
Right. And the key there that you said is you have to plan ahead. And
Yes.
that's what it all, so much of this comes down to. It is planning ahead. And
Right.
how is it that I can, make my family part of this?
Yeah.
And include them or their meals or their
Yeah.
transportation or whatever.
Yeah. So first of all, when you've established that you have a business day, then that's going to cover your transportation to and from the location that you're at,
Right.
plus your local transportation. So if you're taking taxis or Ubers or you rent a car, that then becomes deductible. Your meals become 50% deductible. If you want your family to tag along, hire them to work in the business. Now, it's best to have them hired before the trip occurs. So it can't just be, oh, yeah, they're helping me manage my schedule, wink, wink,
Right.
when we're away on business. But if your kids are already working in the business, give them something to do, to either help prepare you for the meetings you're doing, assist at a conference. Maybe you're setting up your own speaking engagement. You could have them there checking people in or selling your books. And the same thing is true for a spouse. As long as the spouse was involved with the business prior to and after that trip, and the amount is reasonable given what they're actually doing. So all of these things that we talk about, it's really about walking the walk, because it doesn't do you any good to be nervous and worried that you're going to get caught someday. It's better just to be totally legal, and then you can forget all about it. And if an audit happens, you're well prepared.
Right, right. And I think that's, you talked a little bit about the, hiring your spouse, hiring your kids and things like that. But like you
Mhm.
said, they have to have a bona fide job. It can't
Right.
just be, okay, yep, I'm writing checks to them. And then now I'm going to expand on that and take them on this trip with me that whatever it is that I'm doing business wise.
Right.
And then saying that they're employed and so forth. So again, it
Right.
goes back to planning. And if you look at what you just talked about with the travel, now you've taken two different tax strategies and layered them on top of each other. And,
Right.
and that's what tax planning is about, is layering these different strategies that we had. Like you said, there's over 400, tax strategies, for
Right.
business owners. And there's more and more popping up every year. With the Inflation Act just opened up a whole lot more different strategies that we're going to be able to use in credits and things like that. Um, I guess
Right.
what are some of the I'm going to say the pitfalls that you have seen with people who aren't properly trained in doing tax planning?
I would say the biggest thing is, approaching the plan in a reactive way, meaning the professional is either waiting for their taxpayer client to inquire about the planning. So the client asks for it and then they go, okay, and they come up with a few ideas, but then they go right back to the reactive approach to the work. And so again, it's that concept of throwing the plan in a drawer and go back to business as usual, and they come back and see you during tax season. And that's not true planning. I think the second mistake I see a lot is that we are we are bombarded with advice these days. And now with things like Chat GPT, it's even more complicated in terms of understanding who's telling the truth
Yeah.
and who's blowing smoke, right? I don't know if you've found Chat GPT lying to you, Gary, but it's lied to me quite a bit and it was very convincing.
Right.
Um, and so simply taking a piece of advice, whether it's from an accountant or a TikTok expert or Chat GPT, a piece of advice is really just an idea And an idea is not a strategic plan. It's not the same thing as a strategic plan. Again, you really are looking for combinations of different strategies that are ideal to you. I've done thousands of plans in my career. No two have ever been identical, not even in a partnership where I had two partners in the same business, both plans completely different. And so you want to look for somebody that's going to actually sit down, work in real time, work in advance, put it in writing, and assist you through the whole process. Implementation is one of the biggest things, right? You might advise someone, hey, you really better be an LLC. It will change your tax situation. But if they don't ever go out and open the LLC, it's not going to help, right?
Right.
And so this is something that you're going to need assistance with on implementing it. And as you said earlier, maintaining. Now that you've got the tax savings, how do we keep it? And keep adjusting as we go along, as things in my business change, as my goals or my life stages change. Things are different for me now than when I had young kids at home.
Right.
And so you want your plan to adjust with that, and that takes maintenance.
Yeah. Now, you will hear many times the business owners are like, well, they're my CPA, they're my tax advisor, they're supposed to be telling me all this stuff.
Right, right.
You know, obviously we know that's not true, in the fact that a lot of people don't know all of this, but it's a totally separate engagement because, like you said, you're paying me to prepare your taxes. If
Right.
you want tax strategies and you want planning, you have to pay for planning.
Right. It is a completely separate engagement. So that's something else to look for is, difference between advice / idea. And I'm guilty of doing this for years before I really realized that, hey, this is a specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, what I would do is sit down with a client, and when they come in to review the tax return and sign it, I might offer some advice, maybe an idea. Hey, maybe you ought to hire your kids. Maybe you ought to plan these appointments in advance, and then you can write off your business trips this summer, right? Again, that's not a plan. And so just making the assumption that they're already taking care of that for you is a big mistake. But the other thing is just making sure that it's treated separately. And I'll tell you, it takes two very different parts of the brain to do this work versus tax preparation. When I'm doing tax compliance work, that is making sure the filings are done properly and on time and they're paid and all of that, I'm using an analytical center of my brain versus when I'm doing planning. I am using that analytical center, but I'm also using creativity and strategy with that.
Right.
And for me personally, I cannot do both of those things either at the same time or even in the same day. So it absolutely should be treated as a separate engagement. And here's the great thing about tax planning, and you know this, but a lot of lay people don't understand this. You should really be seeing about a 5 to 10 times return on investment when you're paying for this work.
Right.
And that's the beauty of this, is that you really are making an investment in this work so that you can achieve your goals faster and have more money left over in your bank account every year.
To piggyback on that, most of the time when the tax plan is done, it's not just the savings you have this year, because a lot of these strategies are going to go on for year after year after year. And yes, the tax code's going to change. Yes, you have to get your tax plan tweaked accordingly and things like that. But again, the basics of it are going to get you that tax savings for the next 5, 10, 15 years, depending on what the strategy is.
Right. And if you think about it in that transaction where we're buying tax services to prepare the return, you're really just buying the completed forms.
Right.
And that's what you get in exchange for the money. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. We all have to have it. I have to have it for myself too. We have to have it, but it's just not as easy to see the return on investment like we do with the strategy, because again, and the strategy really ekes into other areas of your life as well. We look at things like asset protection and estate planning and succession planning. And so those are things that are going to assist you throughout your life as the owner of the business. And
Right.
that's a real investment that you can see dollars and cents return on.
Yeah. I mean, you said a little bit earlier, when you're looking at things from a compliance standpoint versus a tax planning standpoint, and the tax planning side of things, is more, I'm going to say, thinking outside the box.
Right.
And you have multiple publications that are out there, think outside the tax box. And I always, kind of use that when I'm talking with potential clients of, okay, most of the times a CPA is going, no, you can't do that. It's like, well, find somebody who's going to say, hey, wait a minute, let me think about that. Let me think outside the box to find a way to make that work. Sometimes you can, but let's try to find a way to make it work. What is it that you're trying to accomplish in game? And then let's figure out how we get there, because we may not be able to use that one particular thing that they want to do, but there may be other strategies that we can use to still get them there.
That's a great point. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 different possibilities to accomplish a tax savings, for example, and which is right depends on a number of things. It depends on how that particular strategy fits into the puzzle with everything else we want to recommend, right?
Right.
Depends on how it fits in with the lifestyle of the taxpayer. And I always like to tell people, back in the day, it was Hummers. People would run out and buy these Hummers towards the end of the year, and there's no limit. You could just write off the whole cost of that car.
Right.
But if you're a Prius kind of person, does it make sense for you to run out and spend $100,000 driving this vehicle you don't like, that doesn't fit with your values or your personality or your needs? It's all about working within the lifestyle you have. And for that reason, a lot of I would say the majority of the strategies we work on really just work within whatever you're already doing.
Right.
There are what we call spending strategies. Sure, if you're going to put away for retirement, you'll get some savings from that, right?
Right.
But you've got to put the money away in order to see the tax savings. And what I enjoy doing, and I know you're the same, we like really analyzing and saying, okay, knowing what we know about the business, knowing what we know about family, knowing what we know about investments and where they're going, what shifts can we make with what they're already doing and have that fit? And you just see the taxes drop instantly. And that's exciting. It's really exciting for us to be able to bring that kind of result to people that we're working with.
Yeah. I mean, because again, the scenario you just talked about with the Hummer, I mean, that's being reactionary. And it's not, it doesn't go, I keep, planning.
Right.
I think that's a piece. And I know when I look at somebody's business and their personal to put together a tax plan, lots of times I'm asking them, hey, what are you spending at home? Where are you spending your money and things like that, to find out, because lots of times I'm finding that the entity structure that they have isn't the right one for what they're trying to accomplish, or they're missing out on a lot of tax deductions because they don't have a particular structure. Unfortunately, you ask them, why did they pick that? It's like, oh, well, my CPA at the time told me that's the one to do. And it's like, well, did you talk to them about X, Y, and Z? Well, no, they never asked me about that.
Right. You hit on 2 things that I think are really important. Number one, the entity choice is huge. And to your point, most people go into that decision without considering the tax implications. Even if it's your tax accountant who tells you to do it, that is not a question that can just be answered off the cuff. the most optimal answer really depends on a lot of things. And so what they really should be doing is analysis, projections and calculations and comparisons to be able to tell you. So it goes back to that idea that this is not boilerplate. There are not two tax plans that are the same for two people, because it all depends. Everything depends. And so as an accountant, I really can't answer that question with integrity. When somebody says, hey, I'm starting a business, what should I be? I don't know. And then the second thing that you hit on, which I think is huge, is getting this deeper understanding of where your clients are coming from. So you mentioned, where are they spending their money? And that's not something that we're trained to do in a traditional tax preparation business. We're going to get enough information to fill the tax return and move on to the next project because we're so overloaded. But really, truly, you want an accountant that understands where all the money is going. What are your personal goals, and what are you spending personally? How does your business function? How does it make money? You know, we oftentimes will just see one number that we put on the tax return that says income, but that income could be made up of all different kinds of streams of sales, right? It could be from seeing patients and selling retail products. It could be from manufacturing widgets and selling them and licensing out your molds. You know, there's a lot of nuance with the business, and we don't get that level of detail simply by preparing the form. So that's another way that you can recognize a really good planner, is they're going to go deep. They're going to really want to understand the inner workings of what's going on, and why are you paying this person this salary? How did you come up with that? Right. Let's talk about it, right? And are there ways that you can mitigate that with tax-free compensation? Yeah, that's huge especially when you hire your family. You want to give them tax-free compensation. Business gets the deduction. Family member doesn't have to report the income or pay tax on the income. And it's moves like that are huge, but we have to know that. Right. So we also just can't take somebody and just from looking at their tax situation say, oh, here's what you need to do. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think there really needs to be a good interview process, right, to get those things, because again, we need to look at it, and to me, it's a holistic approach in how we do things. And like you said, you can't just look at, go do this, because that's not always the best thing for them. That's for sure. Right.
And understanding, you know, what are the biggest struggles in business, because we've got a lot of experience. We've worked with hundreds and even thousands of businesses. And so that gives us the opportunity to help and to support. So we might not be able to solve that biggest problem that you have, but chances are we've encountered similar situations, and that allows us to bring solutions to the table that you might not ever think about. And why not have more support in what you're trying to do? It's great. And so it really goes beyond just the strategy itself. When we see the benefits from this work, it's more confidence for the business owner, that they know that they're doing things in a strategic way, that they're working towards a goal and something. They have the support that they need to do it. And they feel 100% confident that we're bringing them enough ideas to the table that they don't have to bother learning all that stuff. Right. Really, your tax planner should be the one saying, Gary, we need to talk because this new law just came out and I want to change these 3 things about your plan so that you're in position to be right there at the front of the line and get these benefits.
Right, right.
And that's freeing. That's very freeing. It's one less burden on the business owner.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think that's just keeping that open dialogue is very important. And I think that people, you know, if you have a tax planner that you're working with, you know, there's got to be frequent check-ins to make sure, you know, that everything's still going in the right direction. But from being the taxpayer side, if there is a change in your life and your income or anything else, you have got to tell the tax planner, because that may change the way things happen. I mean, we all saw it with COVID and what that
Right,
did, and the number of plans that we had to go and change because of it.
right.
So it definitely needs to be done.
But that's exciting, isn't it? Because
Oh, it is.
there's always something that can be done. And that's what makes this work so fulfilling for people like you and I, because it gives us that opportunity to be fresh and new and bring in those new things that can be done. And so it's not the dry old tax that you've heard about before. This is really an exciting career, and it can be exciting for both business owner and planner to collaborate together.
Right. I agree. You and I could sit here and talk for hours, I'm
Oh
sure,
yeah.
about all of this stuff. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
Well, let's see. We've talked about the main differences and how to identify the level of service that you're already getting. We've talked a little bit about return on investment and how that works. We've also talked about some of the ways that this works. So I think we were pretty clear there. Let's talk about who.
Mhm.
Who does this actually work for? Because there are very specific markets or niches that this provides opportunity for. By far and large, we see small businesses have the most opportunity.
Right.
And so that might mean that if you don't own a small business and let's say you're a school teacher and you're getting a W-2, there are still some strategies that we can offer to help you, but there just aren't as many. And so with the business, we can scour through the whole tax code and come up with a nice chunk of things that we can offer. So I just want to be clear about that too, that the average employee isn't thinking, great, I'm going to reduce my tax bill by $20,000 a year. However, what I will say is there are opportunities to get in the game, and it's never been easier than it is right now with our gig economy. So
Right.
if you're an employee working for somebody else and you've ever thought about a side hustle, whether that's driving for Uber or renting out a room on Airbnb or you name it, you might be crocheting and selling on Etsy. These open the door to tax planning opportunities for you. Even investing in real estate, you might have always thought about that. If that's your situation, a tax plan can absolutely help you with that because it opens the window to all of these possibilities and we can bring them in to your situation. So don't be intimidated about having this discussion. The other thing is retirees. There's a huge disservice to retirees in this country.
Yeah.
Most people don't start thinking about tax planning and retirement until you've already claimed Social Security benefits. And by then, you've missed your opportunity to lock in a 0 or 10% tax rate. That takes planning. And so if you're really wanting to lock in a very, very low rate, 10, 20 years before, that's the time to think about it. So that's another great opportunity, is managing your assets in a way that not only will you have enough to get you through your lifetime with the lifestyle you want, but do it in a tax advantage way so you don't pay a penny more than you absolutely have to.
Right. Yeah. I think we all will agree. We will do a better job spending our tax dollars than our government will. So,
Yeah.
let's use them wisely.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Dominique, if people like what they hear, if there's CPAs that are listening to this and they want to learn about, being a tax planning expert, or just a listener that wants to find somebody or talk to you, how can they reach out to you?
Just go to certifiedtaxplanners.com. Certified Tax Planners, that's plural with an S.com. We've got helpful information on there for small business owners as well as tax professionals. So you'll see some clear indicators on where to go, and then the computer will take you. We've got lots of free resources, books that are available. So if you want to get a little bit more into this and explore what actually does that mean, we've got examples, case studies, things of that nature. And if you're looking for somebody to work with, call Gary. Gary, you work remotely with people,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I'm sure you've got contact information available, and I wouldn't let geographic areas stop me from working with the best advisor. You want to work with somebody that not only has the specialty, but someone you feel has a good understanding of where you're trying to go, and someone that's willing to put that level of care into it. And so somebody doesn't need to be across the street for you to benefit from that. It could just be like what we're doing right here, just on camera.
Agree 100%. Dominique, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the great words that you've given the listeners, because I think that, obviously this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I enjoy it. And I just think that there are so many people that are out there that aren't taking advantage of the tax code like they could.
Right. Absolutely. And you know that I'm on this mission. You've joined me in that. And we are trying to get to as many people as we can. Now, we can't personally help everybody, because then we have the same problem that preparers do, right? We're drinking in the volume, and we can't do a really great job at it. But we are trying to at least get the word out so that people understand that there are experts out there that are looking to connect with you, and so that you don't have to feel like you have to be rich or famous to pay taxes just like they do. You just have to know how to play the game.
Exactly. So I really do appreciate your time.
You are welcome.
Everybody, this week our guest was Dominique Milano, and she is the co-founder and president of American Institute of Certified Tax Planners. I will see you guys next week.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.